Hey guys, my name is Shai. This is Evermind Astro. This video is Jupiter in Capricorn. And if you didn't watch the Jupiter in Sagittarius video, I would recommend you go watch it because, these energies are completely different, right? The energy of Jupiter in Sag and Jupiter in Capricorn, very, 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 very different. And yet, it's so important to understand how they work together, right? Because you got Jupiter in Sagittarius and then Jupiter tips over into Capricorn, and that is the turning of the cycle. That is when everything changes. And this is just, I can't talk about these energies without bringing this up, right? So as I mentioned in Jupiter in Sagittarius, and this video is meant to be about the natal placement, Jupiter in Capricorn, and it is that. However, while I'm talking about this, right, we want to also just think very briefly about the transiting Jupiter, right? The 12-year Jupiter cycle. So as we have Jupiter in Sagittarius, that is when everything is super up, right? That's like the height of the financial markets. And this video is not all going to be about finances, right? But I have to mention this because it is part of this energy for both Jupiter, for both Sagittarius and Capricorn, and kind of for Jupiter in general. We ended up talking about money, right? About abundance, finances. Jupiter in Sagittarius is the top of the cycle, and then that's when markets are really up, right? Then when Jupiter comes down into Capricorn, that is the market crash. And don't take financial advice from me. You can look up the transits for yourself. Think 2008 and 2020. Big highs, and then when Jupiter tips over into Capricorn, everything goes to shit because Jupiter does not like being in Capricorn. Jupiter is in fall in Capricorn, okay? Jupiter is in fall in Capricorn because when Jupiter moves into Capricorn, this is when that party in the sky, that huge, big energy, that's when it has to come back down to earth. And that's when everything just, if you have a house of cards, if you have a house of imagination, right? All of that stuff that isn't entirely real, suddenly becomes unviable, right? Suddenly becomes unviable. And when Jupiter crashes down into Capricorn, everyone becomes concerned about what is real and about reality and about what is actually viable and about what is viable long term. This is when bubble tends to pop. Okay, so that said, let me now focus on the placement, right? The natal placement of Jupiter in Capricorn. This might also resonate if you have Jupiter in the 10th, right? So it's actually kind of interesting because in some respects, there are similarities between Jupiter in Sagittarius and Jupiter in Capricorn, and that is this energy of building wealth, okay? And building legacy, but they do it in quite different ways. Because Jupiter in Sagittarius is like the big momentum, the big building, the big explosion, the big expansion. And then Jupiter in Capricorn is making it real and turning it into a legacy and bringing it down to earth and grounding it. And just because markets tend to crash when Jupiter enters Capricorn, that doesn't mean that Jupiter and Capricorn people aren't abundant. And I would actually say, for you guys, you are quite lucky here because, and anybody who actually has Capricorn placements, that means when the Jupiter cycle comes around and Jupiter enters Capricorn, you're probably going to be doing good while everybody else is hurting, right? Because you're probably set yourself up so that when markets crash, you're like, hey, I got my money in cash, or I got my money in the bank, or I got my money buried in the backyard, or I bought gold with my money, or I bought a house with my money. I took my money that I used, that I gained when everything was all exploding off the top and everything was all super fiery and explosive energy, right? And I took it when everybody else was partying and snorting coke, right? I took my money and did something concrete with it, right? I grounded my money. I turned it into something that is stable and secure for the long term. You guys really have an eye, not just for making huge amounts of money. And this is the thing, a lot of you might not actually make tons and tons of, you might not be the ones who make the generational wealth, but you might, for example, make a moderate income, but do a lot with it. Living very well on a moderate income, and creating stability and normalcy for your family, and retiring well and, you know, comfortably and all that on like what might be a moderate income, but it's because you use your money to create, to like actually create something with it, right? You're not just like making it and spending it. You're taking your money and you're using it to create something that you can actually use, right? This is, and this is, so I want to now depart from the, you know, the financial side of things. I want to talk more about like what this energy is actually about. So, because it's like really easy to just end up like talking about money and that kind of stuff forever with this placement, but there's a lot more going on here, and it will depend a lot on your like the other energy involved here, right? If it's, you know, if you have Jupiter and Capricorn in the 5th house, for example, this is going to be like a lot about expanding and materializing your creative potential and your self-expression, right? So it won't so much be about finances if it's in the 5th house, right? It'll be about your self-expression. So you have to like really translate this and blend this together. Or if, you know, if it's in your 10th house, but you have it with, I don't know, Pisces, then that's going to be like weirdly about like spiritually dissolving into your career, into your like expansive career. So there's all different kind of ways you have to blend this together. So it is about Jupiter and Capricorn. I think if I were to really kind of capture the essence of this, it is about materializing higher energy. Okay, like I was going to say spiritualizing physical energy. You know what? I think this goes both ways. You're downloading energy, right? You're downloading energy from the higher realms because Jupiter is part of how you access higher energy, right? Along with Neptune, but that's a different conversation. Jupiter is part of how you access higher energy. And when it's in Capricorn, you're spiraling it down, and you're bringing it down into the underground. You're bringing it down to earth, but you're also trying to turn it into a legacy, something that will live beyond you, something that you can pass on to future generations, right? It's not just about you. It's about creating something beyond the self and creating something beyond the now, really, really, really with an eye to the future. But it goes both ways, where you're also gathering this earthly energy and spiraling it up, uploading it, right? We talk a lot about downloads, right? How much do we talk about spiritual downloads all of the time? What about uploads, right? What about uploads? Taking all that is good and wonderful and beautiful about this earthly existence, like the taste of chocolate and an orgasm, okay, and a pizza and standing on top of a mountain, right? And swimming in the ocean. All of these sensory sensations that are so good, right? There can be like a little bit of like a hedonism to this placement, a little bit of a hedonistic vibe to this placement, but you guys would be, depending on the rest of you, right? Depending on the rest of your chart, depending on how you are, and depending on all like a million other things, right? You might be more inclined to actually see hedonism as like a good thing. Like, how often is hedonism used as like an accusation or a dirty word? Or like, oh, that guy's like a hedonist, as if that's bad. See that a lot in spiritual circles, right? Like, hedonism is bad, earthly things are bad, ignore the physical world, right? Like, just ignore physicality entirely. It's this dirty, horrible place, and we're just trying to return to where we came from. I mean, if you guys, those of you who know me, who watch my stuff, and you know that I'm not about that at all, right? I'm not about that at all. I got Jupiter in Taurus, right? Which is kind of similar because it's the Jupiter in an earth sign, right? That's not Virgo. Anyway, gathering these earthly experiences, these earthly sensations, right? And uploading them into the higher realms. And if you want to get really esoteric about this, if you want to go really off the deep end, you can think about how you guys are building a sensory experience in the higher realms. Because why should the higher realms, right, the spirit world, I don't want to call it the spiritual world, because that implies that the earth reality is not spiritual. I will be preaching to the day that I die that the earth is just as spiritual as the invisible world, right? Non-physical energy and physical energy equally spiritual, okay? So important. So like that is like a core tenet of my entire spiritual belief system. Anyway, so you guys have this you're probably vibing with this, right? Most of you, some of you won't be, because no one's going to agree with me all the time. That would be weird. But a lot of you are probably vibing with this, and just know, maybe you've never thought about it this way before, but you're not just downloading spiritual energy and putting it into earth, you're also gathering earthly energy and spiraling it up into the higher realms, into the non-physical energy, so that when we're out there in disincarnate, right, when we're in between lives, when we're not down here on the earth, we can have physical sensory experiences up there, right, out there in the non-physical space. You can actually create physical sensory environments out there. And then how cool is that? Because then think of all the souls that don't come down here into the physical and don't take lives on Earth or any other planet, right? For however many reasons, right? Think of all the souls that never do it. Then they can have the experience of standing on top of a mountain and of having an orgasm and eating pizza and swimming in the ocean and getting really drunk. You can have those experiences without actually coming here. You can create the physical world and all of its beautiful, amazing sensations, including the sensations that sometimes are unpleasant, but the soul, and here's something else that I think you guys are gonna kind of understand on a visceral level. Even sensations that are unpleasant, like having a hangover or overextending yourself in some way, you know, like when you go for a hike and the next day you're like so exhausted and your whole body is just like so stiff. Even that feels good, right? A sunburn, sometimes even that feels good, right? Or like, ever get a toothache and you just keep poking it because somehow the pain feels good, right? All of the physical sensations that even skew towards discomfort or pain, even those are part of what enrich the soul, right? And even those are part of what create your experience. And there's a little bit of an understanding here about how all of the good stuff wouldn't quite be the same if it weren't for some of the unpleasant stuff. Of course, I think most of us would also agree that we could do with less of the unpleasant stuff and more of the pleasant stuff, right? But there is some kind of wisdom here about how you wouldn't want to entirely do away with discomfort. You wouldn't want to entirely do away with unpleasantness, because some of that, a little bit of that, like getting stiff after going for a hike, or maybe sometimes it's worth it to have that one drink too many because maybe now you remember a really fun night, even if you're got a hangover the next day, right? Kind of balancing that out and just kind of taking it all as what is. And I would say with this placement, you really have a potential here to like just really not be judgmental about experiences, right? And to just take things as they are and to go, yeah, that's like that. Yeah, that's like that. And I'm not going to judge it. I'm just going to experience it, because there's really value in the experience. There's just value in the experience. And that's like tuning into the like how you might be thinking, how is any of this like related to Jupiter and Capricorn? I would say it's because Jupiter is that higher wisdom, right? That higher spirituality, right? The planet of higher spirituality and money, which is kind of interesting, right? But in this case, the planet of higher spirituality. And then Capricorn, which is, for those of you who don't know, I'm a quintuple Capricorn. Sun, Uranus, Saturn, Mercury, Neptune, all in Capricorn in the second house. So I think a lot about the more esoteric elements of Capricorn and the redefinition of Capricorn away from some of the more traditional interpretations, right? Anyway, that's where I'm coming from on this. That's why I mentioned that. Capricorn being about the culmination of the earthly experience. The culmination of the earthly experience. So Jupiter in Capricorn is blending that higher spiritual wisdom with the culmination of the earthly experience. So that's how all of this is involved here. So I could really go off the deep end on this, but I do want to keep these Jupiter videos around this length. So I'm going to call this good. Check out all my links down below. I have another YouTube channel where I do tarot readings for starseeds and lightworkers. I do private readings. They're all tarot reading based, but I do have astrology readings where I combine astrology and tarot. I have an accelerated evolution container where I make full moon and new moon videos all about how we can tap into the energy of those moons and use them to accelerate the evolution of our consciousness. That's $8 a month. $8 a month for 2 videos. And yeah, I got other stuff. Check out my links. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.